Joining us is our NHL Network insider, Elliotte Friedman, to kind of take a look at this. And, Elliotte, we know with Lou Lamoriello, we've both been around it a long time. This kind of comes out of nowhere because he keeps things buttoned up. What was your reaction when you heard the news?
Well, I think the first thing you hear is you're like, oh, my God. And, one of the things you make sure is like, so someone sends you a note and you're thinking, okay, is this a practical joke? Is this for real? You never know. And not taking a shot at Patrick Waugh or anything like that. It's just that it's such a big shocker that you're sitting there saying, okay, I better make sure that this is correct. And even when the Islanders sent the tweet out, and they've got the gold check mark there, which is the standard of excellence per Twitter right now, you still almost don't believe it. You check the follower account and everything like that. But there's a couple of things here. Number one, I think we kind of did realize there was the possibility of a coaching change coming. And number two, Lou Lamoriello has always had a fascination with the Montreal Canadiens. And I know it generally goes back before Patrick Waugh was in his prime and was such a great player for Montreal. But anytime I hear anyone or Lou Lamoriello being interested in anything, I always make a note, like, is there a Montreal connection? The other thing, too, and I think it's important to mention there, I believe that, initially when Patrick Waugh left the Avalanche, the way it happened, there were a lot of people who said he'll never get a second chance. But I think as time goes on, and people, memories change. People get the opportunity to reinvent themselves a little bit. People think that Patrick Waugh is a really smart guy and really knows how to get players to play. And I'm not hugely surprised he got another shot at this. One thing I had heard, guys, was, and I'm going to check a couple teams, but I had heard he was on the radar in at least one, if not two other situations. So I think Patrick Waugh's time was coming, and I'm not hugely surprised it was Lou Lamoriello who decided to take the jump and do it.
Elliotte, from what you know of Patrick Waugh, what does he bring to the table immediately for this New York Islanders squad?
Bill, I think one of the things is he makes you run through a wall. These highlights, like, this is perfect Patrick Waugh. Like, well, he's always looks like he's yelling or seething or something like that, and he always has had incredible confidence. Bill, you played for coaches. What's one of the things you have to have? You have to have presence. You have to have control of the room. Patrick Waugh, he has presence. He has control of the room. And I think that's one of the things that'll have. He'll grab control of the room. He'll demand they play a certain way. He'll have their attention. And the other thing is he really fires up people to play for him. He understands what buttons to press. He has the credibility of being a Hall of Fame player, and he really knows the games. One of the things that people talk about is some coaches, they're great motivators. Some coaches know the little small things to improve people's games. He knows both. And, sometimes our best characteristic is our worst characteristic, and his fire and his temper probably does both things. But look, clearly Lou Lamoriello thinks the fire needs to be lit under the legs and feet of the New York Islanders. There's no one who's going to light a faster fire than Patrick Waugh.
Elliotte, it's funny you mentioned that Montreal connection. It reminds me of some 30 years ago when Lou Lamoriello hired Jacques Lemaire, when everybody thought Jacques Lemaire was going to no longer coach, and he only came in and helped the Devils win a Stanley Cup. You mentioned the way Patrick left the Avalanche. There's some of the viewers right now might not understand that story. He left late in the summer, left them in a kind of a tough spot. Maybe you could kind of just give a little bit of a background to that, because that was an issue, and it seems like, talking to people close to Patrick Waugh, he understands the mistakes there, and he seems like he's really excited to be back at it. But just for viewers who don't know kind of how that played out in Colorado.
Well, it's a great question, EJ, and I should have explained it the first time, so good on you for bringing it back up. Patrick Waugh, when he was the coach of the Colorado Avalanche, as you mentioned, he left the team late in the summer, and he hired a media relations firm to make the announcement, and it really blindsided the Avalanche. And, it turned out really well. Like, they hired Jared Bednar, who led them to a Stanley Cup. And one of the things that happened there was Chris McFarland, who's now the general manager of the Avalanche, he worked with Jared Bednar in Columbus, and so he really pushed for that opportunity for Bednar. And it turned out to work really well for the Avalanche. But in the moment, they were really caught off guard and really angry about the way they handled it. And like I said, there were people who said, like, fool me once, shame on me. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice, shame on me. And there were people who said, we're not going to put ourselves in that situation. But, and as you said, Watt admitted that was a mistake, no question about it. And like I said, I think feelings change over time. Things change over time. People get the opportunity to learn from their mistakes. And Watt clearly has. Like, you know, like I said, I have to do a bit more research on this, but I really do believe there were at least one or two situations where teams were considering Watt, and I would bet that Lamoriello was aware of that.
All right, Elliotte, we'll let you get back to work. Big night for you. Hockey night in Canada Saturday night. A lot to talk about. Thanks so much for taking a few minutes for us today.
I'm already late for the production meeting, but for me, that happens all the time. They're not surprised.
All right, get
Thanks,
going,
Elliotte.
Elliotte. Get going.